Welcome to It Wasn't Me, a true crime podcast where you get to hear us tell you about gruesome murders that have intrigued us. I am Cindy.
And I'm Mercedes. Welcome to our first episode. This episode is full of gory, horrifying details, so listeners beware. Our podcast is not recommended for children. We will detail graphic scenes and graphic violence, and we'll use offensive language, so put your kids away for a while and join us for a murder. So before we get started, Cindy is going to tell you a little bit about our social media stuff.
Yes, we have a website. Please visit us at itwasn'tmetruecrime.com, where you can find links to our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts.
Great. And all details in the story are true as far as we know. We're not making up any of this stuff. Most of it we got from newspapers, interviews, and other online sources. All right, so this story takes place in St. Charles, Missouri. It's a city about 30 minutes outside of St. Louis with at the time, a population of about 200,000 people. St. Charles was considered a relatively safe outer suburb of northwest St. Louis, so many people were shocked by the murder of a young female. At about 6 o'clock on Sunday, April 26, 1998, a Lindenwood University student was walking to his job at Pizza Hut when he encountered what he thought was a prank. He found a partially nude, bloody, headless mannequin. It was Parents' Weekend, and there were many sporting events going on, so the campus was full of parents and spectators, and the pranksters were out in full force. Within a few hours, according to the St. Charles Police Captain Patrick McCarrick, it was soon crawling with more than 40 detectives. Well, as soon as the unwitting passerby took a closer look, he realized that he was seeing the real deal, a decapitated, partially naked female. At that point, he wasted no time contacting campus security, who contacted the St. Charles Police Department at 6:50 a.m. Now, it should be noted that I looked up the victim's obituary, and that stated that the person walking to work was a female. This is the only place I found that shows that the person was not male.
Whoa. So their obituary gave this information?
Yes, in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, it said that the victim was, she was a victim of homicide, and it even said how she was found by a female walking to work.
See, that's right up my alley. I need to know all the details all the time. I mean...
Right. We don't do that here. Our
there's nothing more awkward than calling up somebody and saying, hey, yo, how did that person...
Right.
Did that person have cancer? Did they had a drug overdose, right. Didn't they?
Yeah.
But
yeah, I want to know those details. You're right.
That's why it's none of my business, but I want to know.
That's right. We're nosy. We want to know why people die. Anyway, I'm just going to continue to call the passerby a male since I only saw that it was a female one time. And the obituary, you think that's probably the legit, but I don't know. Anyway, I did find an article in the Linden Link, which is Lindenwood's online publication, that when the police arrived, they quickly determined that the victim was a young female who had been sexually assaulted, stabbed to death, and decapitated.
Good grief.
They had no idea who the victim was, so they quickly went to work searching the campus for evidence. And according to Lieutenant Chad Fisk of the St. Charles Police Department, her headless and partially nude body was found on a footpath between what are now the Lindenwood Water Towers and the Welcome Center. You're never going to guess where they found her head. They later found her head in a porta potty on the other side of campus.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Very, humiliating. Is humiliating the right word? Like
demeaning.
Demeaning. It's a desecration.
Disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's just like the worst place ever.
Yeah.
I mean... You know, I was in New Orleans one time, which is the worst place you can be to use a porta potty is New Orleans. And
yes,
I saw a guy actually passed out in the porta potty, and the EMS had to come rescue him.
Ew.
Yeah, that was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life.
Well, no, I can top that, okay? Because I read just the other day. That they found this pervert, and they call it a bowl, in the bowl of the shitter, like. Okay, because he got off.
How did he get in there?
I guess he just crawled down through the hole. Okay, but he
like underneath the porta potty.
No, like in the water part,
like in the blue part where the blue water is.
Okay,
That's
well,
gross.
I don't know. Sometimes it's blue. Sometimes it's brown. But anyway, he told cops that he really enjoyed watching females poop. So I mean, yeah, seriously, I read that the other day.
That's disgusting.
Disgusting. Yes. Okay.
There's some fucking
no
weirdos.
disrespect to our victim.
No, not at all.
Okay. So anyway, police continue to gather evidence following what leads they had, which were not many. I mean, they had crime scene photos. They had the victim's head. So what they did was they tried to interview people on campus, professors, students. But the president of the university at the time, he was kind of a hard ass. Like, he had been featured in Riverfront Times Magazine, which is a magazine in St. Louis, they said that he tried to prevent any negative reports about the murder from getting to the public. He was known as being hard to accept external authority. He guards his campus from local intrusions, to the point that when the victim was raped, stabbed, and decapitated on campus in 1998, it was common knowledge that he was giving the police fits, refusing to release information on the faculty or allow them to search rooms. So, he's kind of being a jerk. But then again, he didn't want bad publicity. If your kid was going to that college, you wouldn't want to pull that kid out immediately.
True. But, I mean, you don't want bad publicity, but there's a murder that just took place on your campus,
yeah.
So you're going to get it.
Right. But, you know what, the cops pressed on. They got their search warrants or whatever they needed to do. And in an effort to identify her, they took a photo of her head. They cleaned it up. They took a photo of it and showed it to students across campus. According to McCarrick, the police officer, said that it was a cleaned up picture. It didn't show that her head was cut off or anything like that. He said that they had to know who the girl was. But none of the students recognized her, and the police were considering, this was still the same day they found the body, that they were thinking about releasing the photo to the media, but they didn't have to, because there was such a media frenzy, helicopters all over the place, police vans, that it was reported, this headless body was reported on every news outlet out there. And just before they decided, just right after the 5 o'clock news, right around 5:30, the girl's mother called the police to report her daughter missing. And her description of the girl matched the body.
So 11 hours later.
Right. So after she saw the news and said that learned there was a dead body on campus, she's like, oh, well, maybe I'll report my daughter missing. So after watching the 5 o'clock news, she called the police. Dawn Sabourin was her name, to report that her 13-year-old daughter was missing. So
it took her 11 hours
right.
to report a 13-year-old little girl missing.
Right. And so the
My
police...
kid's missing 15 minutes, I'm freaking out.
Right, yeah.
But I track his ass, so...
And, we're going to talk a little bit more about the situation, but, I don't know if they just didn't realize that she had been missing since the night before. They did not. The mom and the boyfriend had been out all night. They were investigated and determined to have an alibi, so they were never suspects. They were cleared almost immediately. The daughter's name was Tiffany Jaylene Sabourin, so Tiffany Sabourin. She was a 13-year-old 7th grader at Wentzville Middle School, and she was babysitting her 8 and 11-year-old brothers at her mom's boyfriend's apartment that Saturday night. So she went missing. The last time someone saw her was 10 o'clock that night. Her body was found at 6:50 a.m. or about between 6 and 6:30 a.m. Sunday morning.
So she must have left after the boys were asleep?
Yes, because the boys never knew that she left. And when the boys woke up, they just went around. They made themselves cereal. They watched cartoons or whatever kids do in the morning. So the parents didn't get home. The mom and the boyfriend didn't get home until the next day. And I guess when they got home, they just figured that the girl had left to go hang out with friends that day. So when she didn't come home around dark, that's when the mom started freaking out. But I remember I was bartending at the time. And I just remember, the outrage people had of this mother. Where was she? And why did she report her daughter missing earlier? And how dare she? But
that's easy for us who aren't in that situation to say,
Right.
I would never.
It's easy for us to judge and say I would never. Now, I did read that the mother was 19 when Tiffany was born, and I can relate to that because I was 19 when my son was born. And
I was 20.
Yeah, so I was still young, and it's hard. It's hard to say you wouldn't do that in that situation, but who knows? I do remember that people were freaking out about this. At where I was working, one of the guys would come in and talk about what he had heard. He was friends with some detectives, and he had told us about the head being found in the porta potty before it had even been found. He also said that she had been gutted like a deer. I didn't see anything like that in anything I read, but he had said that he heard that from the police officers.
Well, hopefully that's just
hearsay,
because that's, I can't imagine.
It's awful. I couldn't imagine that desecration on a body at all. I know the whole town was just crazy. They, everyone was talking about it. People were scared to go out at night. Everybody thought a lunatic was on loose. People at the university, they were in outrage about security. So they had a buddy system,
Well, I mean, campus security probably wasn't all that it is today then, and there are reasons why we have the security today that we do on campuses. Right. I mean, I know when I went to Florida State, I think that the call boxes were fairly new. I really don't know. They were there when I got there, but I for whatever reason, I think that they were like a fairly new system. Right. And they're, they're like every 15 feet.
Well, I do know that president he had a bad reputation for like not spending money. Like the budget was really tight, and he didn't have a whole lot of funding going towards campus security. Like people complained about lighting and unsafe, dorms, like the locks weren't good locks, and people would break in, the windows were, and he wouldn't want the police on campus, so if things would get stolen, he wouldn't make any reports or anything like that.
Yeah, because usually campuses have their own police force.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and then I don't know how much he spent on that. Like, I don't know the budget there. I know there was campus security because they're the ones who called
they called the actual police.
Right. They're the ones who called the police. Now, I just keep thinking that this poor girl, her head was cut off. Like, I can't imagine, first of all, who could do such a thing. But not only that, like, can you imagine the force that it would take to cut someone's head off from their body?
No.
Like, you have tendons and cartilage and bone in there, and, like, the sheer force, and not only that, but the sheer will to do it. Like, you realize, oh my God, I'm cutting somebody's head off, and they just keep doing it.
Yeah, no, I mean, unfortunately, I've seen the video online where one of the terrorist groups were beheading some of the, and it wasn't just like a guillotine. It was, I mean, they were having to really.
God, you watched that?
Yeah.
Ew.
Told you. I'm morbid.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not something you want to watch more than once, but I saw it and I was like, oh, that's really fucking disturbing.
Okay, yeah.
But it's not something that's not like.
Right.
Like I said, it's not like a guillotine, and sometimes even the guillotine didn't get it the first time.
Well, I read that the knife had a 5-inch blade, so that's not super long. That would take some time to cut somebody's head off, I would think.
Yeah.
Even if you're angry, I don't know. And then the fact that the head, I mean, did he carry it around by the hair? I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry, but I have these thoughts in my head.
Well, yeah, because as you continue on with the story, there are details where he.
Well, yeah. So, anyway, once they identified the girl, they interviewed her friends, her family. She was loved by her family and her friends. Most people have wonderful things to say about her. Her friends said she was fun. She liked to sing and be loud. Her stepmom said she was a beautiful girl with a gorgeous smile. She was good at math and softball. Her grandma said that her smile lit up the room and the holidays just weren't the same without her there.
I imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, with all of those things, though, she did have problems. So one of her school counselors said that she had problems, serious problems, since the 4th grade. Of course, she can't elaborate on that. I was surprised that she even said that, and it was in the newspaper. Not only did she have problems that the counselor said, but the stepmom said that she had stolen a couple cars. She had wrecked a couple of them. She may have stolen cars before, but she got caught twice because she wrecked them. She smoked cigarettes. She was known to sneak out at night. She's also reported to have been dating a 15-year-old boy, and we'll talk about him in a little while, but I don't know if that's from a valid source or not. It's obvious that she had some problems that may have led to her making some less than safe decisions, but she was a child. She didn't deserve to die like that.
No, not at all.
Police said they suspected the victim was acquainted with her killers and probably met them somewhere near her home only a few hours before she was sexually assaulted and killed. They continued to work hard. The cops, they interviewed hundreds of people. They followed over 400 leads, but they weren't having much luck. And then, everybody was like, what can we do? We need to find the killer. But they didn't have much evidence. So one guy, a canine officer, suggested that they call in bloodhounds. He suggested bloodhounds. So they did. They called in 2 dogs, one named Chester from Dearborn, Michigan. And then they called in Samantha from Porter, Indiana. And the dogs and their handlers arrived in St. Charles on May 1st. So the murder happened on April 25th. April 26th. They found the body April 26th. So 5 days later, maybe 5 days later, 6 days later, the dogs came. The dogs were unable to do anything because it was raining so hard. It had been raining super hard for a whole week. So the police were really worried that maybe any evidence was washed away. Yeah. But when the dogs were able to finally get to work, the police officers picked up some gym clothes from her school locker, and they.
So at this point, they were just looking for evidence. They had already found both her body and her head.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So, because I know a little bit about cadaver dogs, so these probably weren't cadaver dogs. They were just search and rescue dogs, but they were really just trying to search for her scent to try to find clues.
Yeah,
or
I think so. Now, at one point it said that they were decomposition dogs, like they sniffed decomposition. But why would they give the smell of her gym clothes? Well, they took the dogs to the apartment where she was babysitting, and they gave the dogs the scent of her gym clothes. The dogs took off running for over a mile. They went to the pond by where the body was found. And the dog Chester went first. He led his handler from the apartments all the way to the pond, which was over a mile away. And at that point, he keyed in on a specific corner of the pond. Then they took the female dog out on a boat, and then she indicated at one corner of the pond, it said that she wanted to jump in. So at that point, they flagged that area, and they brought divers in who recovered at the bottom of the pond a bed sheet, and tied up in the bed sheet were a bunch of rocks that make the bed sheet sink to the bottom.
Well, but if they were cadaver dogs and they were searching for clues, then they would have been able, possibly. I mean, I don't see how they could smell through the water, but I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing, yeah, because they said that.
But if the bed sheet was used and they were trained to smell the death, they're trained to smell death. So,
yeah,
if he used the bed sheet to transport her in any form, any way,
yes,
then they would have.
Yeah, so they did test the bed sheet, and it did have signs of decomposition on it. So it had the girl's scent, and that was it was miraculous to the police officers, because they said that the dogs smelled that girl's scent on that sheet from a mile away over a hill a week later under 5 feet of water, and it rained every day. So from the minute they found her body, and I don't know if it was raining the day they found her body, but for 5-6 straight days it rained. So they were afraid of all evidence. But, those dogs have some sense. I mean, they have, like, the power of scent.
Well, they're able to locate body parts, tissue, blood, and even bone.
Yeah. Under 5 feet of water, after 5 days of rain, over a hill a week later, yeah. So anyway, this bed sheet, it turned out to be the break that these detectives needed to solve the case because it was very unique. There was a design on it. The sheet was beige and it had large black-brown circles with dove's wings intersecting them. And the police had never seen anything like this sheet. They're just like, somebody's going to recognize this sheet. It's just so weird looking. So they released a photo of it. It's
kind of like a fluke because...
Yeah. I mean, a bed sheet. I mean, I guess...
Yeah, I've never seen a bed sheet. Well, there's plenty of bed sheets I've never seen. I wouldn't think, well, this is a really odd bed sheet unless it... I don't know. I just...
Well... They decided, after 2 days, they were going to just release a picture of the sheet. They had nothing else. And within 30 minutes, they had 3 phone calls about this sheet, okay? I mean...
Which is crazy in itself,
right?
I mean, yeah. Like, oh, yeah, I remember, Johnny's bed sheet was that... I don't know,
All right. Well, one of the people who called in, Jason Richter, he was a 19-year-old education major at Lindenwood University. He called and said, hey, that sheet belongs to my roommate, Jason Shipman. So the cops were like, really? But before he called in, he got a call from his girlfriend. His girlfriend was like, before that even, he and his friends had been joking around because his roommate stopped coming back to the dorm room after this girl's murder. And so they joked around suggesting that Shipman had packed up because he was a murderer.
Could you imagine making fun of your friend? Teasing, or not, I mean, Woody's not there now. Well, I bet it was Jason, that freak.
Yeah.
And then... to think that you were just kidding. And
right. So Jason Richards is hanging out in his room and his girlfriend calls. She's like, you've got to turn the news on right now. That sheet, Jason's sheet is on TV. And
see, leave it at the girl. Leave it to the girlfriend to remember. The boyfriend didn't remember. He didn't have a clue.
Right.
He was just making fun of his friend, but the girlfriend would notice something like that.
Right. She noticed the sheet, right?
Yeah.
So he turned on the TV and he saw the sheet on TV and he looked over at his roommate's bed and saw this pillowcase.
Because if it's a dorm,
right,
it's just one room.
It's one room. He saw the pillow with the pillowcase on it, the same pattern, and the fitted sheet, and the flat sheet was missing.
Yeah, that's, yep.
So he's like, he called his dad, and then the dad came over, and they called the police. The police came. He said that the police went through and searched the stuff. They ended up taking some of Jason Richards, like I think he said a calendar and something else, but this kid was so impressed with the detectives. He said that they were fun. He said they were professional yet fun, and they had a banter between them that he really was impressed by. He was so impressed he ended up changing his major, and instead of going into education, he's now in law enforcement. So,
such a tragic event changed one person's life, who ultimately he probably changed, helped many people.
Right. I did read an article about his career. He was recognized for saving somebody's life. He ended up shooting a bad guy. So I don't really know can't remember the details on that, but he was recognized for being brave in the line of duty. Anyway, back to the story. Police ended up looking for the roommate, Jason Shipman, and they finally found him at a motel a few towns over, and on May 3rd. So he, of course, when they got him, he denied knowing anything about it.
Wasn't me.
Oh, wasn't me. No, it wasn't me. Then when he got to the station, he's like, oh, yeah, I know who it was. It was my friend Billy Joe Logsdon. So Billy Joe Logsdon, now he's a 15-year-old middle schooler.
Hanging out with a 21-year-old.
Hanging out with a 21-year-old hanging out with a 15-year-old. Okay?
Yeah, right.
I can see why the 15-year-old be hanging out with the 21-year-old,
right.
But the other way around, I don't get that,
yeah, no.
right? Hey, buy me some beer, right? Anyway, police ended up picking up Logsdon, and this kid, he's got an IQ of 81, which is the lowest of the average IQ. They ended up picking him up, and he ended up confessing. He confessed to the crime 3 times, but his story kept changing. And eventually, police realized, the story isn't adding up. But they still locked him up and put him in jail. They actually were going to charge him as an adult. He was certified to be tried as an adult. He served about a year in jail before...
For a crime he didn't commit.
Right.
But he admitted to it.
He confessed to it, right? Yeah. Just as a side note on him, it was a lot of his friends that he hung out with in the neighborhood said that he moved to St. Charles because he was trying to escape gang ties that he had. Like, he would brag about drive-by shootings. Oh, yeah, I would never do it for money or anything. Okay, well, really? I mean, what would you do it for, right?
Right,
okay.
yeah. So it sounds like he just needed some attention.
Yeah.
Not that makes it okay, but...
Well, not only that, but he also was a drug addict at 15. He had drug and alcohol abuse. Psychiatrists said that he had a low IQ, but he also suffered years of abuse and would need serious treatment for 5 to 6 years.
Jeez.
They argued that he shouldn't be tried as an adult because of those mitigating factors, but of course, the prosecuting attorney said, no, this is a heinous crime. So he was charged. Shipman was also charged, but now Shipman lived in the same neighborhood as them before he moved into the dorms. His landlady,
so that's how they knew it.
I think that may be how he knew, but it was all in the same neighborhood, even to college.
Yeah.
Shipman's landlady said that she ended up evicting him because he didn't pay his rent. He was a liar. He was loud. Neighbors complained. She also said that he was as mature as a 9-year-old.
Oh.
So
that might be another reason why he was hanging out with a 15-year-old, because he was more on that level.
Right, yeah. Because he didn't hang out with his college roommates. As a matter of fact, his college roommate said that he would just kind of stay to himself and play with baseball cards. It was kind of odd.
How do you play with baseball cards?
Right, yeah.
Organize them? Or
I don't ask me. I don't know. He had a girlfriend. Jason Shipman had a girlfriend, the 21-year-old, and had a child with her. This was before the murder.
Oh, wow.
He had a child with her, and she ended up putting out a restraining order against him, saying that he was violent and she was scared of him. He apparently beat his sister super badly one time. He also lived in... Well, let me see if I can get to that. Oh, yeah. I'll get to that in just a minute. But anyway, they ended up realizing that they had sent the sheet and some cigarette butts and other evidence to the FBI crime lab and for DNA testing, and that took about a year to come back.
Holy
and at that
crap.
point, I know, and this was 98, and it's still, there's a backlog of that stuff, but when
and it's not what it is today anyway.
Right.
I mean, it was...
And it's not CSI episode, right?
No, definitely not.
Anyway, when the evidence came back, Jason logs in. There was none of his DNA anywhere at all. Jason? It was all Jason Shipman. Billy Joe Logsdon, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. None of his DNA was on any of the evidence. It was all Jason Shipman, the 21-year-old.
So did they determine if the 15-year-old was even there at all?
He was not there. They don't think he was there at all. As a matter of fact, he walked free. So at that point, the prosecutor went to Jason Shipman, said, look, your DNA is all over the evidence. We're going to go for the death penalty unless you confess. And Jason Shipman confessed. He told them that Tiffany was babysitting her siblings at her mom's boyfriend's apartment the night of April 25th. He said that she steps outside to smoke a cigarette when he approached her. He asked her what time it was to start a conversation, and she offered him a juice box.
A juice box?
Yeah, a juice box.
Cigarette and a juice box.
Cigarette and a juice box.
Oh, bless her heart.
I mean, it just seems so sweet. Are you thirsty? You want a juice box? And
maybe that's all they had, because they were a bunch of freaking kids.
Well, he drank it, I guess. Anyway, he convinced her to leave her brothers at home and go with him, and they walked to his dorm room. They sat in his dorm room for a while listening to records, and she's like, no, you know what, I have to go home because my mom's going to be home soon. So he offered to walk her home.
So she cared about she knew she needed to be home. It doesn't sound like that she probably had free reign.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, did she choose to go with him like wholeheartedly, or did she feel manipulated in any way?
Did she get the creeps and was like, I got to get the hell out of here?
Yeah, oh, that's a good point. I don't know. He told cops that she, was kind of hitting on him, and they smoked pot, but there was no marijuana at all in her system. There were no drugs in her system at all. So she might have smoked cigarettes, but she wasn't doing drugs or anything like that.
Was there any alcohol in her system, did it say?
No,
that's good.
Maybe juice box.
Yeah.
So he started walking her home. They reached the footpath next to the water tower. He said they stopped to smoke a cigarette, and then at that point he said, I knew I was going to kill her. So he stabbed her in the back and told her to undress. He said that there was blood all over, but he sexually assaulted her. Then he stabbed her in the chest with his buck knife, and then he stabbed her another time in the back of her neck, and she was paralyzed. And Shipman said in court that before she died, her last words were, will you please take me to hospital? I can't feel my legs.
Oh, bless her heart. This is why I track my kids.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I got an app. It tells me how fast they're going in a vehicle, how many miles they went, and how fast they.
Yeah. Well, and this is 98. They didn't have that then either.
But because of stories like this, the reason why there are helicopter parents.
Right.
Here.
Yep. Let's see. He then cut off her head and burned her genitals in an attempt to cover up evidence. So, you know what? How long did it take to cut off her head? Like, is he not worried about somebody just walking by? It's a footpath.
Right?
Okay. Well, so then he burns her genitals in an attempt to cover up evidence.
So he knew, it's not like he just had a temporary lapse in sanity.
No,
he knew what he
tried
was
to
doing.
cover it up.
He tried to cover it up.
So at this point, he went back to his dorm to grab the bed sheet so that he could use it to carry her head from one side of the campus to the other.
So he left her there?
So I don't know if he just left her body with her head there, or he carried her head by the hair and took it into the dorm, or he left the head there and came back for it. Why he decided to take the head and put it in the toilet, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I mean, does it say, like, this was a secluded area?
No, it's a footpath, like, by the college. It's kind of, there's woods and stuff there, yeah.
I mean, being that you said it was parents' weekend, there were some games going on,
yeah.
You would think, on a Saturday night, there'd be kids everywhere.
And, this is, again, just what you garner from newspapers and online stuff, so who really knows? What is known is that he said that when he finished taking her head, he took the sheet, put rocks in it, threw rocks on top of it so that it would sink down. He told police that he had been hunting on campus for a while. He would have been a serial killer is what the cops said.
So,
he's been wanting to kill someone for a while.
If he got rid of the blanket or the sheet by throwing it in the water, it's like, did he put the head in the porta potty because he wanted it found?
Well, that's what police are saying. They're saying that it was staged, that he was wanting attention for this murder.
So this was
okay. Wow. Actually, McCarrick said he's a classic organized killer. He probably would have become a serial killer had we not caught him. Now, I don't really know that much about classic organized killers, but to me this doesn't seem that organized. It seems like he's kind of like trying to cover it up. But then again, he also, I guess he took the head away to try not so that she would be harder to identify. I don't know. He probably, according to McCarrick, he probably would have been a serial killer had we not caught him. It was clearly a sexual motivated crime. He says that he didn't care who the victim was. Saying he didn't care who the victim was is nonsense.
Well, God, I mean, this probably wasn't his, like you said, it's not his first act of violence because he beat his sister and then the girlfriend was afraid of him. So there probably weren't any stray cats in his neighborhood because he had killed them all.
Probably. Who knows?
I mean, who else?
I don't know.
I guess no one else came forward to say this psycho tried to hurt me or tried to do this?
Well, it did say that he had a history of petty crime. It said that his mom and sister lived in a mobile home until management threw them out because he was caught peeping into young girls' windows.
So this is an escalation.
Yes. It said that Richter, the roommate who called the police, said that his roommate kept to himself most of the time. He didn't bring much of his life around the dorm or me, so he didn't really know that much about, like, they didn't hang out or anything like that. He just basically kind of hung out with outside people. He said that he rarely brought girls back to the dorm, but rarely means that he must have once or twice, right?
Right, yeah.
As I said, he did father a child with a previous girlfriend. He ended up pleading guilty and was sentenced to 3 life terms plus 150 years without the possibility for parole. And he is incarcerated at the Southeast Correctional Center in Charleston.
He's not on rideaprisoner.com because I looked it up.
No. And he has refused any sort of interview with anyone about the crime. There are a couple of rumors that Tiffany was dating the 15-year-old Billy Joe Logston. Oh, yeah. And she broke up with him, and so he told her that he was going to kill her. There was also another rumor that Jason Shipman had seen a play on Lindenwood campus called Macbeth, and that after he saw that, he wanted to go and stab and rape and kill someone. But, you know, who knows that, if that's the truth or not.
Right, people just pull in, oh, well, I remember this and this, you know, assumptions. Wow.
Now, I know that a lot of her peers at schools were terribly affected by this. When these kids started going into high school, I met a few of them, and, you know, they were still traumatized by the event.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like, you know, it affected a whole community. It was horrific, and I'll never forget it, which is why I chose it to do as my first murder on our first episode.
Yes. All right. Well, if you enjoyed that story for our first episode, please subscribe, rate, and share, and please tell your friends. All right. And please visit our website again. That is itwasn'tmetruecrime.com. Visit that website for more information to learn about us. And remember,
it wasn't me.